Hi, Chris. I just wanted to start my exit interview by saying thank you so much for a great semester. It was always fun coming to your class on a Friday, and I always left having lots to think about over the weekend, so that was great. So, thank you, and then I'll get started on my exit interview topic. So, I've kind of combined what I talked about in my rant and what I've talked about in my resource critique. So, thinking about mental health and Indigenous studies or education, and kind of thinking about them separately and together. And those are two topics that I think I've been thinking about a lot over my year so far, and especially because they're so intersectional and there's a lot of stuff going on in the news right now connecting them, that I think that it's important to talk about it and think about it. So I'm going to be talking to you about that. I will be kind of starting with Indigenous ed and then going into talking about mental health in both Indigenous communities and rural communities. I will also be connecting those to how I've been pursuing professional development in both topics so that I can take it into the classroom. So earlier in the semester, we read an article titled Aboriginal Education as Cultural Brokerage, New Aboriginal Teachers Reflect on Language and Culture in the Classroom by Verna St. Denis. And in her article, she uses the term neo-colonial governance, and she suggests that due to these colonizing structures that are still in place, it's important that teachers take part in decolonizing strategies in their classrooms in order to break down these structures that are in place. What I've been seeing popping up in the news lately are a lot more articles that are connecting mental health and wellness to Indigenous ways of knowing. So I'll read you a couple of headlines right now. So international experts talk Indigenous mental health, first of its kind First Nations Mental Health and Wellness Conference, mental health services lacking for the Indigenous, how this local hand drum workshop is helping Indigenous mental health. So it talks about what's being done in the communities. So I think that it's a hot topic right now in terms of rethinking the way we approach mental health, especially for Indigenous populations. So I would say in some ways it seems like what St. Denis has asked to happen in terms of using decolonizing strategies is sort of beginning to happen, but it's definitely Indigenous driven, which it should be, but I don't know how much support is coming from the other side of that in terms of the healthcare system in Ontario that's set up from a Western perspective, and if there's any kind of communication between the two. Another topic that has been in the news lately that connects to St. Denis's idea of neocolonialism is still a real structure in Canada today, is what we've seen in the news with the legal cases regarding Colton Boushie and Tina Fontaine, and the Indigenous community and many white settler communities and newcomers and immigrant communities all supporting the Indigenous community in this, in saying, no, these young people have been failed. The system is not set up for them. It is unfair. It is unjust. Something is wrong. So we're seeing how what St. Denis is talking about in terms of neocolonialism connects to healthcare and mental wellness, as well as the legal system in terms of failing Indigenous folk. But I think obviously it seems to be at every sort of system that we have set up that it's not going to be compatible all the time with Indigenous ways of knowing. So we need to continue to look at those structures, and one of those structures is definitely education. And that's one of the things that I definitely was asking myself, like, how can I do something about it as a teacher, and especially as a white settler. So I took a professional development opportunity that was given to me by someone who was promoting the Go North organization at the career fair that we did. So he gave me a great suggestion and pointed me towards a free course offered by the University of British Columbia that's called Reconciliation Through Indigenous Education. So it was a 6-week course and it spanned over many topics. Some of the topics that I really connected with or found that I needed a lot of support in coming to knowledge of were the importance of oral tradition, connections to the land, and how to build relationships with Indigenous communities, especially elders and knowledge keepers in those communities, and how we can make school to community connections. So after taking that course, I definitely feel a lot more confident in how I'm going to bring reconciliation practices into my classroom. It's still something I feel not nervous about, but I think I'm going to find it challenging, but I'll have to push myself to pursue it wholeheartedly and to not give into that comfort, to really challenge myself to be an advocate for the students in my classroom. So I'm going to move on to mental health and wellness, but it's kind of been woven throughout the Indigenous topic that I talked about. But I have also been really thinking about that, especially because of where I'm from and the community I'm thinking of going back to in terms of being Thames Valley, but the more rural region of Thames Valley. So I think I talked to you in my rant about we've had a high rate of youth suicide in our communities. So thinking about how can I be there for my students? How can I be there when they are struggling? How can I be there after something has happened in our school community? What can be done to take care of myself? All of these issues are things that I've been thinking about, so I thought I should pursue professional development also in mental health and wellness. So I've done that by taking 2 courses. The first course that I took was called ASSIST, so it's Applied Suicide Intervention Skills Training, and I took it at the Oxford County branch in Woodstock, and I thought it was really important to do that because I wanted to get a local focus of where I will probably end up being, or at least from a rural community focus. And it was an amazing 2-day workshop. I feel so lucky to have been in a room with such amazing people. So they refer to the people that take the workshop as community caregivers. So I'm now a caregiver in my community, and I have skills now that could help someone who is at risk of suicide. And it really is all about learning how to hear what are called invitations. So if someone is in distress, how to ask the question, are you suicidal? Are you thinking of killing yourself? And then thinking about, okay, afterwards, once you've talked about that, listening for what's called life voice. So finding something that is going to keep them here for now and using that to make a safe for now plan. So I have been able to verbalize that to you, which I would have not been able to do on the first day of the course, but by the second day, I honestly had gained so much confidence in even just talking about suicide. It's not something that I had ever really done before on a regular basis, and I had felt really comfortable talking about lots of other topics, but I didn't realize how much I would want to resist against talking about mental health or suicide, and until I actually had to do it. So it was a really amazing course, and I would recommend it to anyone. And then I also took the mental health first aid course, and that was offered through Golden Key at Brock Hamilton campus, and so some of my classmates also took that. That was also a good course. It wasn't as interactive as the ASSIST course, but it still gave me a lot of information, and I got to ask a lot of questions that I wanted answered. I feel a lot more confident in terms of being able to support students that are struggling in any way in terms of mental illness. And we read a article earlier in the semester by Way, Kuchner, and Somalius, and that was called Comprehensive School Mental Health. And they were talking about teachers as gatekeepers. So I think that all of the things that I've done in terms of professional development have made it so that I can be a gatekeeper in my school community and really look out for students in that way, and be there as a support before all the other social services take effect. So just to kind of wrap things up, I guess, and reconnect the topics of Indigenous ed and Indigenous studies with mental health, I have been thinking a lot, and especially because my partner's in the police service, thinking about how the systems that are in place aren't working for people that are dealing with mental health, especially mental health crisis. And that's beyond the police service. That's including institutions like the education system, the healthcare system, social services, so working with social workers. The system, to me, now seems like it's so segmented, and learning all the language that I was able to relay to you about the ASSIST course is something that I think should be used across, and it's something that social workers have said to me that they would like it to be used across all of the services. So police are going to be using it, healthcare workers are going to be using it, educators are able to use it with their students, so that everybody's on the same page and we can all support each other as a big community, rather than everyone feeling frustrated in a system that's not working. And I think this is especially apparent for me in terms of being from a rural community. So they're starting to pilot programs now where social workers are going along with police officers to mental health calls, which I think is amazing. I'm not confident that the resources or money is there in order to sustain that all the time. But something needs to be done. And especially thinking about it in terms of Indigenous mental health and wellness, these systems are not working, and they're definitely not working for Indigenous folk. And so thinking of ways that we can include Indigenous ways of knowing into the healthcare process and mental health care and mental wellness process, and how we can get a whole community approach to mental health and wellness. And that's going to be a really long process, but I hope that I stay passionate about it and will be able to be an advocate for it in my community in the future. Okay, so I'm gonna say goodbye. I guess by the time you watch this, I'll already have been off on my placement, and you will have already seen me in our last class. So again, thank you so much for a great semester, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the next couple of months, and then maybe we'll see each other on your back porch. All right, thanks. Bye.